Hey everybody, welcome back to the Casuals MMA podcast. It's your UFC 251 edition. Uh, Thanks for listening in. As always, we're part of FanStreamSports Network, filled with a bunch of great podcasts, including and led by the JP Show. And speaking of podcasts on the FanStream Sports Network, we have one of our guests from Set the Sails on here. They cover the Bucks. James, how you doing today?
What's up, man? Good evening. Glad to be here on the UFC podcast, man. I love UFC. I'm all about this. So let's go, man.
I was pumped to get you on here when we did that roundtable on Sports Caffeine last week, and you were just like, "Man, when are you gonna have me on?" I was like, "Hey, we got the biggest card of the year right here, man. Let's get it rolling." So I was glad we were able to get you on and get your thoughts. And then, of course, we have one of our regular co-hosts, Daniel Corrado. What's going on, my man?
What's going on, fight fans? James, thanks so much for joining. I look forward to hearing your perspective on this week's card coming up, and I'm excited just to be back on the line here, or on the web, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So usually, again, we start off with notes talking about the league, but if you haven't listened in the last 2 weeks, we did start an update show. It's just like a short 20-minute show every Thursday night we record. Let me just so just we're not going to touch on anything there except for obviously the main event change from Gilbert Melendez, who caught the COVID. And then we have the switch with Masvidal in there. Guys, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you hear, is this not a great example of UFC following a great protocol?
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the two-piece in the soda. I'm looking to somebody getting blessed by the Masvidal Express. I'm excited about this, to see the baddest motherfucker actually coming in, getting his title shot after 48 fights and not having a title shot ever in history. So I'm stoked about this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. You know, you look at a guy like Masvidal, who's just has this swagger about him that I really love. Just man, he really acts like he's a bad dude, and he is a bad dude. I mean, he really is. I'm interested to see the difference. There's a lot of difference as far as reach and weight and height is concerned with both of these guys. But I think this is actually turning out to be what could be a better fight than what was originally scheduled if you look at it. Definitely two completely different styles here. Obviously, I think the champ's going to retain, and I know we're going to probably talk about predictions later, but I think this is a great fight, man. Overall, if you look at the card, I think this is a great way to end the fight.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, if you had to have Gilbert Burns fall out the week of, I mean, this is the fight everybody wanted beforehand. The reason why we actually have the Burns matchup is because we couldn't get Masvidal signed up earlier in the year, funny enough. So the irony, it comes back around. Maybe they paid Masvidal. We'll get into that conversation. But, back to that point, I think it's incredible to see, the process that the UFC is following to ensure that, everybody's getting checked beforehand, because I think you have to get checked before you fly to Vegas. Then you fly to Vegas, you get tested again, you get quarantined there, and then you get flown out to Fight Island where you get tested yet again and quarantined. So this was a case where Gilbert Burns didn't even make it out of the country. Him and two of his cornermen tested positive. So, hey, also side note, just, hope the best for them, and, that they get healthy soon. Gilbert Burns sounded like he was fine, but always hope the best for everybody. But again, it goes back to the protocol thing. They're being a great example for what other sports can possibly do. Granted, they're also in a silo too, right? Like the UFC is kind of unique in that way, where they can kind of silo out all the individual fighters in that way. Any other thoughts or concerns from you guys before we move on into the card?
No, I really like how UFC is, really leading the way in this. And I think, we talked about that on the roundtable, just how different every sport is. Every sport, including what we cover on the NFL. I mean, it's completely different than what UFC is doing, but I think UFC is really starting to model the way that it should be done. Test these guys well beforehand. Test these guys before they get to the arena. Test them at the arena. I mean, you could never, in this situation and in this time that we live in my opinion, you could never under-test somebody. You want to do things as safely as possible. I commend Dana White for doing this testing so vigorously. And to be honest, I really love how they're doing it and why they're doing it. And they're really, like you said, they're setting a great example, in my opinion, to other sports of how to do this the right way. And you can still have sports and do things in a safe and in a way where it's not going to affect other people.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing too is we kind of alluded to this a little bit in the roundtable too. Is the UFC had a big opportunity because they're essentially a second tier sport when it comes to the U.S. and there's these you have the big three: basketball, baseball, football. They had a huge opportunity, a big window here to step in and look and really cement themselves and get new fans and all that stuff. So I think they've done that in a great fashion so far. They've handled it very well, and the fighters have shown out since they've started back in, what was it, April, I think UFC 248 was. So they've done a great job coming back. All right, so guys, let's move on to this. Quickly, we'll touch on the undercard. We kind of talked about this beforehand. There's nothing really crazy on the undercard. Like, there's no there's nobody's fighting for a title here. Everybody. I don't even know if we really have any top 10 matchups in any division with what we see from the undercard. Have you guys found any interesting matchups when you were looking into UFC 251?
I think the only one really maybe to bring up is Volkan. Reason I say that, he's a contender. I mean, he's been there before. I think, he's definitely somebody to keep an eye out on, but then again, there's really not much to say about it. It's kind of like Sean says, he shows up when he wants to. But I still think it'll be a good fight. So I think that's probably the only one to probably keep an eye out on.
Yeah, I didn't find any fights on there that I really liked. I kind of just looked at the main card and I was like, wow, that's a pretty decently stacked card for 251. So I'm like, you know what, let the undercard go out and do what they got to do. They're looking to gain momentum and get their spot anyway and work toward the rankings and things as it is. So a lot of the mid card fight. I mean, even the undercard fights, I would say since April, there really hasn't been a fight that I've watched, and including, what's coming up at 251, where I'm just like, man, I don't know, that fight doesn't look very good. Like, even the undercard fights have been very good. All of them have been competitive. Lots of knockouts, lots of tap outs, which is really fun for me. I love tap outs, man. Knockout or tap out, I'm with it.
Nice.
So,
nice.
to me, I think it's really been kind of fun to see that since April. But yeah, there isn't really a fight on this undercard where I'm just like, yes, that's the one I want to see at this point.
Yeah, I think to your point, like, guys I always say you got to watch the undercard because you never know who's going to show up. These guys are fighting for contracts, they're fighting for money. So they always put out, especially they're fighting for a UFC contract because nothing's guaranteed in the UFC, that's for sure. You have no longevity there, and especially when Dana White came out with those comments, I think it was last week, saying this isn't a career, this is an opportunity. So you're always you're
got
always
a lot
thinking,
of backfire for that.
Oh yeah, which he rightfully so should have. That was ridiculous.
It's insulting.
Oh, for sure. For all these guys that put their lives and health on the line every time they go out, he makes his money through this. He's a billionaire because of it. It's a ridiculous statement, but yeah, I mean, there really isn't, especially when you go international. The UFC really does, I think, a good job of picking up a lot of the local fighters out of some of the leagues around wherever they're fighting, because of course they're out in the Middle East in Abu Dhabi on Yas Island for this one. So this is the start of a 4-fight streak over there on Fight Island. But yeah, I think to your point, there's nothing really crazy on there. We have a couple fighters from like PFL. You have some good records coming in, but we'll see coming out of there if we got some fighters to watch. So, but let's move on to the good stuff. Let's talk a little bit UFC 251 headliners. So, I believe we start the card off with. Let me pull it up real quick.
We got Paige Van Zandt against Amanda Ribas, and coming in with some pretty good betting odds on that one. Give me 1 second here. We got Amanda Ribas coming in at a minus 950 and Paige Van Zandt coming in at a plus 600, which I was actually shocked to hear that. But yeah, that's a kickoff of the card.
Yeah, so this one is going to be at 1 125 instead of 115, I believe, is where Rebus usually fights. But either way, this one's going to be an interesting matchup because this is the last fight Paige Van Zandt has on her current UFC contract. So we're going to see how she comes out, how she fights. I'm really impressed by Amanda Rebus. She put a stop to Mackenzie Dern's 7-0 start to the UFC. She was a huge prospect coming in because she's she holds a few gold medals in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so she's one of the more renowned female Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighters out there. And Amanda Rebus is a great all-around fighter, especially when you've watched her last few fights. And I think that this is going to be a good way to shoot her up into the spotlight by fighting somebody as popular as Paige Van Zandt. But what are you guys seeing from the fight? And give me some of your predictions before I go on my rant.
Look, I love the, as far as Rebus goes, looking at some of the statistics about her, one of the things that I really love is that she is a big fan of takedown. So she's really going to try to get that takedown. But here's the interesting part to me with takedowns. For her, it says she's about 85% in takedown capability. But here's the thing: she's going to be fighting somebody who outweighs her by like 26 pounds. So it's going to be really interesting to see if she'll be able to take down on Paige. I don't know if it's going to be that easy, to be honest with you. I like Paige Van Zandt in this fight, although I will say that Rebus does have obviously the better record. But I still think Paige as a whole has kind of this overall aspect to her where she's very good in a lot of different areas. And the areas she's not that great in, I think Rebus, if there's an opportunity to take advantage of that, she will. But if she's not able to take Paige down to her level, to where she needs to go on the mat, then it's going to be done. And I don't think she's going to be able to. So I'll give Paige the nod here and say that she'll win this fight. But I honestly believe that if Amanda could get her down on the mat and start to move around and get that submission locked in, we could see Amanda take it. But I don't think so. I think Paige is going to take this one.
Yeah, I'm going to have to side with James on this. I think Paige is going to show up and show out, being that this is her last fight on the UFC card, and she's been talking a lot about money. I think she's going to have to prove herself as she's looking to move over with her husband over to Bellator. I think she's going to have to put on quite the performance to think that she's going to make more money anywhere else other than the UFC. So I'm going to nod to giving it to Paige. I think she's going to come in and show out and put in some work. But then again, I am on the fence with the fact that Amanda is a very technical fighter. Paige hasn't really done well with those kind of fighters in the cage before. But we'll see how it goes. I just think Paige has a lot to prove, though.
Yeah, for sure. And we just had our other co-host join us. Sean, are you there? Your audio's not on, buddy, so you're going to go through that setting, which is fine because that gives me a chance to rant here a little bit. I would be surprised if Paige does go over to Bellator. I think that's a little ballsy on her part because she does make a lot of her money from social media. Like she says, she doesn't even have to fight anymore. But really, I mean, your popularity comes from you being a UFC fighter in part. Obviously she's attractive woman too, so I mean that comes into it. But I do like her because she has always been very upfront about her fight style and like her progression. She's always said, hey, I need to continue working on this or that as I go through. But I just think Amanda is just a better all-around fighter, especially watching her in her stand-up. She's fast. She's furious. She throws a lot of combinations, so I'd really like to see how that translates when she's fighting, somebody with a lot of experience like Paige Van Zandt, who's fought Rachel Ostovich, she's fought, Michelle Watterson and Rose and all of them in the past. So she has that experience fighting the high-profile UFC fights. So how is that going to be? Or how is that going to translate when she's fighting Amanda? Obviously, Amanda has the wrestling or the judo, and she has the black belt in jiu-jitsu. So obviously, if this goes to the ground, it would be interesting to see how that turns out. But to your points, I think that favors her. Although I am going to say I'm going to lean towards Rebus on the fight overall as far as going to a decision. And then, Sean, are you there with us finally?
Can you hear me?
Yes, my man.
Oh, here we go.
So, Sean, real quick, and for anybody that's just tuning in, we have one of our guests from Set the Sales podcast. They cover the Bucks. Check them out on FanStreamSports.com. We got James with us, and then Sean is my brother. He also co-hosts with this. So, welcome to the show, Sean. We're talking about the first fight on the card. What are your thoughts on Paige Van Zandt?
Yeah, I'm sure I would just be repeating everything that you guys said. I mean, at least for me, I've been following her pretty much since the UFC had been promoting when they signed her. I'm kind of over it now, for Paige. I think I heard you guys talking about her in Bellator before I had to log back out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a smart move for her. Just you hear all this stuff about how she made more money doing TV shows than she is fighting. So to me, it doesn't really seem like her heart's maybe not in it the same,
Yeah.
knowing that she has other avenues to make more money and different ways to stay safe, not take this punishment. So I'll be interested to see, like, because she always used to be a fiery fighter, man. She's tenacity, but who knows? I don't know what to think really of it because she hasn't been active.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she had that broken arm that she healed from. She came back. She fought
Broke it
Rachel.
again.
Yeah, Rachel was able to take her down at will, but she was able to get that submission in there. So, but her stand-up looked pretty good when she was able to keep it standing. So,
She's an exciting fighter, though. I mean,
yeah, no, for sure.
It'll be a show.
Yeah,
But I just I don't know see where she is, and like I don't think she's gonna be at the top of this division at all ever.
Yeah, and
I
so
think Bellator's a smarter move.
yeah, so you're siding with Rebus on this one then?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, I think I'm gonna be the lone wolf on that one. Or no, actually, I guess we're 2-2. Sean said he's with her too. So, all right, let's go on and talk about the next female fight on the card, the second fight on the main event or on the main card. I can't talk today for some reason, so excuse me. But this is going to be a rematch. I'm stoked for this one. You got Jessica Andrade. I'm going to start calling her Pile Driver. I don't know if anybody else has started calling her that. Versus Rose Thug Namajunas.
I think they used to call her the Brute.
The Brute? I don't know. I kind of like the Pile Driver. The way she just tosses girls, man, just over her head and down. Yeah, this is a rematch, guys, of a title fight. But funny enough, this isn't even the title fight. So, guys, let me get your thoughts. Let's start with you, Dan.
I mean, I think I'm gonna go with the betting odds on this one. I'm gonna go for Rose again. I don't think she's gonna be as dumb as she was in the first fight. I think if she gets grappled on, she's gonna let go this time. But Rose is coming in still at a minus 184 against Jessica Andrade at a plus 150, which is surprising, being that she got beat the last time. But ultimately, no, I'm gonna go with Rose on this. After listening to her interviews, I feel like she's back into the game. I think she's focused, she's spot on, she's ready to go, and she's just a better striker. You saw that in the first fight. I mean, she was just peppering Andrade the entire fight. She slipped up, and I think it's going to be the same way. I think this time she may actually put her out. I don't even think it's going to go to decision. So I'm excited to see this fight.
Yeah, and over to you, James. What are your thoughts?
Not so fast, my friend. This time, Jessica is going to win this fight, and I'm going to give it to her by knockout.
Ooh.
You know her average fight time? 10 minutes. That means it's done. It's curtains. Jessica's going to knock her out, bro. It's going to happen. All I'm saying, no. I think this is actually a very good fight. I watched the first fight between them. Great fight between the both of them. But listen, I think Jessica's done with this rematch, ready to come in here and just make a name and make a statement. So she's going to do that. It ain't even going to be close to me. I think Jessica, round one knockout. Nothing against Rose. I think she's a great talent, but I'm going to go round one knockout here. Jessica.
Damn, I love that, man. Just that was bold. That was super bold. I love
curtains, he said.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Like for me, I'm not a big Rose fan, at least outside of the cage. She seems to have like a lot of like mental issues, and you would think that, but she performs really well. She says she's super shy. She gets super anxious. When Connor threw that, wheel hand cart thing at the truck, she said that she had like this whole mental breakdown and she couldn't fight for a while because she was afraid. I don't know, that whole crap. But she looks incredible when she gets inside the cage. Now, granted, and Jessica Andrade looks like a little Vanderlei Silva. That's what she looks like. She's mean. She comes in. She hits hard as shit. But the problem is she comes in on straight lines, and I think that's where Rose was able to take advantage of her last time. Is she's moving on a straight line. She's coming straight through with her combinations. And even though she does hit hard, you can almost read her punches, and I think that's where Rose is going to outsmart her and be able to outbox her. Now, granted, if Jessica's able to get her hands on her and make this a dirty fight up against the cage, or even in the clinch, that's her best shot. She cannot let Rose sit in the outside, especially because she's a much taller fighter. I think she's like 4 or 5 inches taller than Jessica. So she has to be able to close that distance and do it well. Yeah, she's 4 inches taller. So I think that's going to be interesting is to see the game plan going into here for both girls. Because if you remember, Rose was whooping up on her in that first fight too. She was peppering her with shots. It looked like she was going to cruise to a victory before Jessica just lifted her over her head, put a cape on her back, and Superman her into the mat. So that's just my thought. I'm going to go with Rose on this one by decision. I think that she just, she just has the technique. She's a sharper fighter, but I'm not putting Jessica away without, she might come with that overhand right or a big slam there for the finish. So, Sean, over to you. Last but not least.
Yeah, not too much to add to that, but coming out of Trevor Whitman's camp, she's going to be ready with his counters, her movement and angles. You've seen it from Gaethje and a couple of those guys that come out of that camp. I just, like you said, Andrade coming straight forward, chins up a little bit, kind of loopy punches. I just think Rose is just going to be there for the counters. Angle.
Yeah, maybe if she works.
I don't think she'll finish. I don't know about that, but I do think she'll win this fight.
Yeah. And sorry, Dan, what were you saying there?
I was saying maybe she'll whip in some of those calf kicks like Justin Gaethje too, and definitely knock Andrade off her game.
Yeah. I don't know. This one's going to be a fun one because you know what? It's hard sometimes. Well, this one's what you see in the women's division a lot is where you see two different styles coming into play. Usually because the men's divisions are more developed. They've been around for a lot longer. So you see guys that are oftentimes like more well-rounded, whereas you see these girls have such distinct styles. I think that always makes it for a fun matchup because that's what MMA was built on, right? Is like styles. So you have the heavy hitter versus the precision boxer coming into this fight. And I'm always excited to watch this. Jessica Andrade is always fun because she can knock anybody out. How do you say her name? No, Kowalkiewicz. No, Jesus. Carolina.
Oh, Kowalkiewicz.
Yeah, there you go. I can't say them damn Polish names. Yeah, she put her on her ass with a nice right hand. You don't see that from the women's.
The scariest women's knockout almost. Well, up until Valentina head kicked Jessica. I think that was like the scariest women's knockout.
Ooh, that one was nasty because you could hear that shin meet the skull. But when she knocked out,
Andrade was like the first girl to put another girl like out.
Yeah, just flat, like flatlined her. Yeah, and you just don't see that again from women often. So that was awesome, and Jessica's always fun for that reason. So, but I'm going with Rose. I think we're split on that one, right? I know, Dan, you said you were.
I think it's 3-1.
3-1.
Yeah, 3-1.
All right. Guess I'm on the better side of that one this time. So, any closing comments before we move on to the next fight?
Nope.
All right, cool. So now we get into the title fights, guys. 3 freaking title fights.
3 awesome title fights.
3 awesome, amazing title fights on this card. It's going to be incredible. I can't wait. The fact that they get this together for the 4th of July, time frame, because usually they do it on the 4th of July weekend, but maybe they bumped it back a week because either they were getting fight week ready or they didn't want it since 4th of July actually fell on a Saturday because they usually have it the weekend of the 4th of July. So who knows? But either way, this is technically their big 4th of July card. And then this is where we start off. This is one of my favorite fights, one of my favorite matchups, I should say, because Jose Aldo is one of my all-time favorite fighters, and he's being matched up against a young, hungry 135er in Piotr Jan. I can't wait for this matchup, guys. But before I get on my usual rant, James, let's kick it over to you and get your thoughts on it.
Of course, you got to start with me. No, man, I love Aldo too. I'm with you on that. Look, I think that this matchup, this could be the fight of the night to me. I look at this matchup. Both of these guys very even as far as height and weight. Not much by reach. Even looking at their statistics, I mean, both of them. Aldo gets a little bit of the draw by TKO, but then you look at Jan, who's won more by decision. So I mean, there's a lot between the two that are similar. I think this fight's going to go the distance. I don't see a knockout. I see a decision being made here. But to me, the more that I look at it, I look at a guy like Aldo who's just, again, I love when you said Jan is hungry because he really is. And it's hard for me to really pick against him. But I'm with you, man. I love Aldo. I love the style. I love what he has, and he's another one of those guys you look at and go, dude, that's a bad man right there. And I really think we're going to see that. So I'm going to go Aldo on this one. I don't think it's going to be by knockout. I think it's going to be by decision. And but I think whoever wins this fight is not going to be happy with the decision, because I think both of them just want to just knock each other out, and that's just fine by me. Let it happen. But I'm going to go Aldo by decision on this.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna go second because I want to change it up a little bit every time. So, man, I'm picking Aldo because of his precision striking. He has still proved when he dropped down to 135 that, one, he can go the distance when he fought Moraes. Two, that he can keep up that pace. He had a great pace through 3 rounds. He still had a great amount of volume. He could pick his shots, and he's still clearly one of the best boxers in the UFC, period. He's fast. If you watch his head movement, it's incredible. The only thing I say going against him is that he's 33, and usually like that's where fighters are teetering on that, like where you're getting old, especially for him, because you figure he's been a champ since he was 23 years old. He's been in title fights for, I think it was about 10 years before he lost to Holloway twice in a row, but he's been at the top for a long time, and you age fast when you're taking beatings from the guys at the top of any MMA division around the world. So, I'm hoping that we don't see him aging a little bit. He looked fantastic against Moraes. Maybe 135's been a rebirth for him. I'll tell you what I see from Piotr Jan right now. He's very flat-footed. He comes very much straightforward. He looked a little bit better in his fight with Faber, where he was mixing up his punches. One of my criticisms of him early on in his UFC stint was that he would only throw 1-2, 1-2. Granted, he was great at the basics. 1-2, 1-2, right down the middle. He lands hard with his right hand, but he comes straight forward, straight back, so he's very predictable in his striking, and to me, that's something that Aldo can pick apart. Now, granted, with that said, he has looked good, especially in his last 2 fights with Rivera and Faber. He started mixing up, throwing more combinations, keeping outside the range a little bit. He knows how to use his long punches, so it's going to be extremely interesting to see. This is going to be a boxing match. Don't get it twisted. No other way. This ain't going to the ground. At least I don't believe it's going to, unless someone gets desperate. This is going to be a boxing match. I'm going to go with Aldo on this, even though he's the underdog, and he's my dude for this one. So with that said, I'm done with my rant. Sean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going the other way. I think Jan's going to win this fight. I think he's just hungrier. I know this is probably Aldo's last chance for a title, but I saw a little bit different fight against Moraes. I didn't think he wanted it that bad. I thought that fight was up for grabs in the 3rd round, and he seemed to kind of just coast it a little bit. I thought he could have done more. And one thing we know about Aldo is he can fade fast. Mm-hmm. And the thing about Moraes is he faded faster, and he wasn't able to keep that pressure up to really wear Aldo down. I think Jan's plan is to kind of do what Max Holloway did. Get him to exchange early, test his ego, hit him with some shots, don't overload on the power, and just wear him down. And then rounds 3, 4, and 5 really start to turn it up. And I think that's his plan.
Yeah. Even though Aldo has like the history of fighting 5-round fights, and this is probably going to be Jan's first 5-rounder, you think that Jan will have the advantage going that deep?
I mean, we just seen Aldo get melted by Holloway twice in a row. That was a game plan. So yeah. I have not seen Jan really slow down much in 3-round fights. So I'm not going to say he can't go 5 rounds. I'm not going to assume that he can either, but I just think that's what his plan is.
Yeah. No, for sure, and I think that that would be a good game plan, because one of Aldo's biggest criticisms, one of his biggest weaknesses is that he does fade, to your point, but he doesn't fight at the same pace as Max Holloway. Max Holloway fights at an ungodly pace. He's super fucking long. These guys are just as tall as each other. They're both 5'7". I want to say Aldo might even have like a little bit of a reach advantage. Yeah, he has a 3-inch reach advantage coming.
I think Jan fights with a lot of pressure. I just don't think he fights with the same amount of volume.
Yeah,
but I think he'll make him work on the feet. Maybe not necessarily through sheer volume, but making him work the octagon a little bit.
Yeah.
And tire him out.
And you know what I think is interesting about Jan that I will say too is, even though he throws those 1-2 punches, he's great at his technique. Like, sure, he's throwing 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, but he throws them crisp, he throws them fast, and he will hit you at the end of that, meaning that he's keeping his range really well. And the other thing too is when he closes distance, it's like a vacuum. He just sucks it, close, and he's right on top of you, man. That's one of the things I noticed that's impressive, because to be able to close distance like that is going to be important for him to beat Aldo. So, but good thoughts from you, Sean. Dan, over to you, man. Last but certainly not least.
No, I think I'm going to piggyback off of Sean. I think, Petr Yan, I think with his power and then taking him into the late rounds, I think he's going to tire out Aldo. And I don't think it's going to go to decision. I think he's going to catch Aldo similar to the way that, he kind of put that work on Faber, just with the harder hits, it just tired him out, where he just wasn't thinking correctly and he just got caught with that nice kick to the head. And I feel like that's going to be the same thing with Aldo. I think we would have seen that in the Marias fight if we had round 4-5, that he would have just tired out. So I'm going to go with Yan on this one. I think he's just going to catch him with a nice stiff right, or maybe even another head kick. But I'm going to stick with the right hands. I think he's a crisper boxer than Aldo is at this point. So yeah, I don't really see much happening out of this one.
Oh man!
For Aldo,
I think you just made the most blasphemous statement of this whole podcast.
Yeah.
Out of Aldo, I meant I forgot to finish it. But I think Petr Yan is really going to bring it to it.
He is not the more crisp boxer. That's my opinion. Obviously, this is all opinion, but he is not the more crisp boxer, because Aldo's head movement is almost unparalleled, save maybe Anderson Silva, who I don't even know if you can count him because he's kind of semi-retired at this point.
Did you not see that Conor McGregor fight? Get out of here.
That was all emotion.
Okay. That was all, yeah. Sean got that. He even still landed on McGregor as he was going down. So that was different.
Before we go with Aldo, look, I know he's had more fights, but he's also won more fights with KO and TKOs. So, I mean, you can't rule out a guy who's won more fights with the knockout than anybody else. So that's why, again, I have a hard time with going decision. But I just think I think Aldo is going to be in great shape to go 5.
Yeah.
And again, Sean, I love what you said. This may be his last chance at a title. So why not go the distance if you're Aldo? Why not train to go the distance at this point? So that's why I'm giving a nod to the old man, because I think he can go, man.
No, you definitely have to respect the amount of championship fights that he's not only had but won, and the amount of time that he reigned over a division. He created that 145 division pretty much. He was a king of it. I know they call Max Holloway the best featherweight of all time, at least Joe Rogan is. To me, it's still Aldo for the amount of time that he reigned. I just think right now at their point of careers, I don't think Aldo needs it for his legacy. I mean, it definitely adds a little bit to it, but it doesn't hurt it if he loses. And I think for Yan, this is his moment. And I think it means everything. I think it means the world to him to win the fight.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and just kind of closing thoughts on this one. Aldo's still a beast, man. I mean, granted, yes, he lost to Holloway twice. I think Holloway just has the tools to beat Aldo just straight up. Like, he was just taller, he's longer, and he has that ridiculous volume. Because if you remember, too, in the opening rounds of both those fights...
Oh, he was getting pieced.
Aldo was putting it on him. Like, that just goes to show how great a freaking boxer he is he was just putting it on Holloway. I think the only thing that... the only criticism I have of Aldo lately is he just got away from his leg kicks, man. Those things were brutal early on, and he just got away from those. He hasn't done them really since.
If he comes out like that old Aldo, just ripping leg kicks, then I would pick him. But you just haven't seen it in years.
Yeah, or his body shots. I mean, he put down Jeremy Stevens. He hit Marias with some hot body shots. Especially too, I noticed that Piotr has a habit of keeping the high guard. And man, Jose loves that. When he sees your high guard, he's going to go for your body.
Liver shots.
Oh, for sure. But again, that leaves his face open for one of those hard rights from Yan. So, so we'll see. I'm excited. You guys sound excited.
There's a lot of things that could go wrong for both guys. That's what makes it so much fun.
For sure. I'm excited about this
one.
Well
said, Sean.
All right. So with that said, let's get into the co-main event. Our second fight. We're going back up to the featherweight division for Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway for a rematch of the featherweight title. Man, I don't even know where to start with this one. So you know what? I'm just gonna pitch it over to Dan. Let's start with you, buddy.
I mean, for me, back to even talking about the John Jones fights, I don't think Alexander did enough to beat Max in the first fight. I don't think he won those championship rounds. I don't think he beat the champion. But ultimately, I feel like, the fans were hurt and we're coming back to a rematch back-to-back on this. As I did with the first fight, I'm going to do with the second fight. I'm going to go Max all the way. He's got the stamina. He's got the striking. I don't think Alexander's going to be able to keep up with him. I think the one thing that Alexander did really good in the first fight was just kept his distance, used the ring to his advantage. But I don't think he's going to have that comfort this time. I don't think Max is going to walk in there feeling comfortable and letting him have his space. I think he's going to overwhelm him to the point where Alexander doesn't know what to do and he's going to get caught. So I'm excited for this fight. I'm not confident at all that Alexander's going to pull something out of like a rabbit out of a hat on this one. I think Max just overwhelming, just going to put it on him, and I think Alexander's just going to cave in. I'm not sure if I want to call it a finish in the later rounds, but if I had to, I think with the pace, I think they may end up stopping it for Max Holloway in the fourth or early fifth round.
Bold prediction. Dan, you know why I love having you as a co-host is because I disagree with 50% of the things that you say, and I can't wait to talk about that here shortly. But Sean, let's go over to you first and get your thoughts on the fight.
I think the keys for Max is to be the old Max. We saw that ever since he fought Poirier, where he kind of got bullied in that fight. He wasn't able to melt him with the pressure. He actually got out struck in that fight in numbers, and he took some serious power shots. It's the first time that we really saw Max get hurt repeatedly.
Yeah.
I think that kind of hurt his ego a little bit. You saw him come back in the Frankie Edgar fight and in the first fight with Volkanovski that he just didn't have the same pressure and the same volume. And you saw Volkanovski just use leg kick. He won purely on leg kicks pretty much and keeping that distance. So I think for Max, get back to the old Max, man. Get in the dogfight. Wear him out. Volkanovski's a muscular dude. He can wear him out pretty quick. To Dan's point, I think he could finish it in the fourth and fifth rounds.
Yeah. Yeah, and
get your 50% disagreement, Ryan.
Oh, no. Don't worry, Dan. I'll be going in on you here in a minute. Don't worry about that, buddy. The other thing, too, is like he's got to hopefully he realizes Poirier's on another level. I would have never thought that back in
Poirier he's a big 155er. I mean, he used to fight at 145, but he's even getting too big for lightweight. So there's no shame in saying that guy hurt me. He still went 5 hard rounds with him and survived.
Yeah,
he just did a Dan Hooker, who's a tough motherfucker.
And throw Justin Gaethje on there too for a finish.
Finish Justin Gaethje, and he had Dan Hooker on all fours after the fight, and Holloway was still standing.
Yeah. For sure.
I mean, that's if I was Holloway, I'd be like, damn, dude, maybe I am a tough motherfucker. Maybe I am the baddest motherfucker.
Yeah, but I think similar to like this, sorry to jump off track, but like the Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic fight leading into the Daniel Cormier fight, they were like, can Stipe after a dogfight with Ngannou come back the same way and overcome? And you saw him, he lost to Cormier. So I feel the same way with like Holloway. He was in a brawl with Ortega and then came into this fight with Alexander Volkanovski. Since that fight, he's had so much time to recoup, so much time to get his head straight. I think he's just going to come into this fight and like you said, Sean, put on a dog fight. Coming into it after
he didn't even take any damage in that Volkanovski fight. It was all leg kicks. I mean, that's pretty much what he won on.
Yeah.
Or Volkanovski. And the one thing I was a big fan of Volkanovski, but I just hated to hear him talk about it this after. He was like, man, I don't even think that fight was close. It's like,
get the fuck out of here.
He didn't get anything to say anything. Like, it was a pretty boring fight. I mean, it was just one of those where neither guy really got in the right rhythm. And I don't think either one landed the right shot to get going.
Yeah. James, what are your thoughts on this fight, this matchup?
So I read a story this week that said that Max Holloway has had limited prep for this fight. And I think that that's very unnerving to me. Mm-hmm. I don't want to sit here and say that Volkanovski is taking anything lightly, neither is Holloway. But we have to remember some statistics here. I love stats. I'm a stats guy. Love that stuff, all right? 18-fight winning streak for Volkanovski at this point. Comes in, again, through his first 8 UFC appearances, undefeated. So, again, it's a situation where, look, I'm with you. I saw the fight in December. I wasn't really impressed, but I still felt that could have gone either way to me. I thought Holloway did a lot to where he could have won that fight also. So if you look at the situation between the two, I don't necessarily believe that Holloway is taking this lightly. I think he's definitely he's I don't want to say he's a killer, but he's a bad dude also. And to me, I think that there's a lot to say here. So as far as picking, this is such a hard one for me. It's kind of a toss-up because both guys are coming into this with just a lot to prove, I think. Both of them are. So I will say I'm going to lean on the winner, and I'm going to go Volkanovski on this. I'm going to say keeps that going. A lot to like from both of these guys, and I hate picking against Holloway. I hate it. But I'm going to go with Volkanovski here. I think there's, I don't think Holloway's taking this fight as seriously as we think. That's just what I'll say on that.
Yeah, I hope so. One of the things too that it is going to be interesting to see how he comes in, because he was pretty forward on the Joe Rogan show after he appeared on there, and he was talking about how he felt like he was winning that fight. Going in there, like he thought he was winning. He said he felt a little off that night, but he thought he was winning it. Granted, he said he was very forward. He went back and watched the fight. He said, "Yeah, no, I definitely lost that fight by decision." Volk landed better, or he landed more shots throughout the fight. But you know what I think is unique is that Volkanovski clearly creates like this challenge for these strikers. I don't know if it's distance or something or what it is, but he did the same thing to Aldo before that fight. If you guys remember correctly, he had a boring fight with Jose Aldo, but he beat him by decision with those leg kicks. He was able to keep a distance, and both those guys are taller than him. In Max's case, much taller than him. And for some reason, he causes trouble for those strikers, man. So there's something with him. And I tried watching him closely. I tried watching like his physicality and what he's doing in the ring that makes it tougher. And I couldn't really figure it out. He just hops in and out of range. He has those thick ass legs, and he kicks hard as shit. So for him,
it might also be because he did in those two fights. He really didn't throw a lot with the hands. So maybe Aldo and Holloway, who are counter strikers, they just couldn't find that timing in those windows where they necessarily wanted to, because they couldn't figure out when he was going to come in, when he was going to use his hands. So maybe it just kind of threw him off, and it just made him hesitate a little bit.
Yeah. And that's it. But that's interesting because when you're fighting, especially, so Aldo's the counter striker, right? Max Holloway's more a pressure fighter, kind of like a Nate Diaz, if you want to say that.
He works the counters off the pressure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true too. And he does. And you're right. And he does. But I think that it's unique because he does create that trouble for him. Like I for some reason, I can't read this guy. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
No, I think it was, I was watching a video, about Volkanovski talking about his training and how a lot of his techniques from rugby come into play, that just explosive, constantly having to move, up and down, up and down. And if you see him in his fights, he's constantly in and out and like very explosive, throwing his shots. Nobody can ever really catch him. And then like Sean said, just with his leg kicks, the power of that. I mean, he was 240 pounds in rugby?
240.
He's down to 145, still carrying those tree trunks. It's just so easy for him to just move around and throw people off. But still, I just think Holloway, against even what James is saying, is just going to come into this just very headstrong, and I think he's just going to apply the pressure. But then again, to James's point, both of them have something to prove, but I just don't think Alexander's going to pull it off.
Bro, let's go back to that last fight. Alexander Volkov landed 75 leg kicks. If you remember, he made Max go left-handed later in that fight because Max is...
That's what 75 leg kicks will do to you.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with those tree trunks whipping around and hitting you in the leg, too, man. Those were some heavy freaking shots.
Ow.
Yeah, ow. That hurts.
Yeah, but I think he probably game planned for that, man. You have to.
Yeah.
You can't walk in there, especially as frail as Max Holloway's legs are. You cannot walk in there with that same game plan. Like, hey, just switch it up after the first 50. He's got to be doing something different, and I think it's just going to be a dog fight in a cage.
That's why I said he needs to be the old Max, because if he closes that distance, he can't kick.
Yeah.
As Ryan says, fighting in a phone booth, right?
Yeah. Actually,
that's where Max shines in his fights, is when he gets those guys into dog fights, because then he just outlasts them.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have the power to really come from behind.
Yeah. I'm going to even take it a step further. My thought going into this was that Max Holloway needs to keep the distance and needs to stay away from those leg kicks. He needs to hit him from the outside. Alexander Volkov's only like 5'5", man. Max Holloway's 5'10". He's tall as crap.
But he doesn't have long arms.
No, he doesn't have long arms, but you still have that hop in and out of range with your legs, with your body. Your body's still longer. He needs to be able to hop in and out of range and not take those leg kicks this time around. And he should be able to pepper him with shots from the range. That's how he's going to win this fight. Because if he stays a lot closer to Volkanovski, it's going to be hard because he's going to be taking a lot of leg kicks again. Volkanovski had you can almost guarantee he's going to come in with that same game plan. It worked against Aldo. It worked against Holloway in the first championship fight. Why would he not do it for a third time? And you're talking about the two best featherweights back to back all time that he's beat with leg kicks. So I foresee him.
See Max changing it up that much, Ryan.
Yeah.
I feel like he's just kind of stuck. Sometimes you just can't teach an old dog new tricks, and I just don't. I think he's just going to put the pressure. I don't think he's going to fight that perfect fight and win by decision.
That Styles won him almost all of his fights except for Poirier.
Yeah. That's why I'm picking Holloway for this. Trust that. The only reason I almost don't
Okay.
The only reason why I almost don't want to see Holloway win this is because I hate flipping rematches. And if Holloway wins this one, there's going to be a third freaking match between these two.
Well, it depends on how the fight is. I mean, if he just comes out and just whoops him, I don't think there's a rematch.
I hope not, because I don't want to see these guys fight right away.
I don't think it'll be a rematch unless it's like a fight of the year type.
Yeah. Which Volkanovski looked incredible against Chad Mendes, and he showed out, but he looked pretty flat against Aldo and Max.
He looked like he's now kind of fighting to win instead of to finish.
For sure.
He's just looking to do enough, and that's why I have a hard time picking him too, because Holloway, he's going to come in.
Yeah. All right, guys. Any closing thoughts on this one before we move on to the main event?
Nope.
All right, cool. We had a good conversation. I figured that one would be everybody loves Max Holloway, so we could talk about that one a little bit. So let's talk about the headliner, baby. The BMF. Woo! George Masvidal stepping in on short notice, on a week's notice.
Yeah, the main event just got a lot more exciting.
Against Kamaru Usman, who just whooped up, thank God. I think Kamaru Usman might be my favorite fighter just because he destroyed Colby Covington. Thank you. Thank you, Usman. But, all right, before I go on my rant like usual, guys, let's kick it over. Actually, Sean, you know what? Let's go with you first. What are your thoughts? Give me your feelings.
Got a lot of them.
Two different opinions because who I think is going to win the fight and who I want to win the fight are two totally different things.
Yeah.
Who I think is going to win the fight is Usman. I think his wrestling is just going to be too much for anybody in that division. He can go 5 hard rounds. We saw that his striking's come a long way in that Covington fight. And I don't think he's going to let Masvidal get off any shots on the feet. I think he's going to come right out and just push him up against the cage, work him, tire him out, take him down. I think he's just going to wrestle fuck him for 5 rounds. But if Jorge can land a couple big ones early and get that respect, who knows, man? Shit can get weird from there. But I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put money on that.
I think for me, I think Kamaru is probably going to try. He's going to come in with the same pride as he did with Kobe, and I think he's going to try and stand and bang. But I don't think he's going to have a jaw like he did with Kobe against Jorge. I don't think he's going to do the crotch sniffing, especially for Jorge calling him out on it. Like, don't fucking do it. I think he's going to try and shut him up.
No, I think he's going to be too smart for that. Because
you think so? You think he's going to tire him with his ass?
Advantage on the feet.
Of course, no, for sure.
If he in a boxing fight, he's going to lose. He's going to get knocked out with Masvidal. He's just going to kick him in the body. He's going to get him with all these counter shots, get him all fucked up in the head. And then the shots are going to be too late by then.
Yeah.
No.
James, what are your thoughts before we all start just yelling at each other here?
And it's fun. I went back and looked today because I knew we were going to be talking about this fight. You remember, these two got into a little bit of an altercation back in January. Had some words to say to one another. So this is not, to me, this is a fight that's been brewing for 7 months, really, if you go back to it, to that altercation. Look, I feel bad for Burns because, again, I thought this was going to be a good fight, and hopefully he's okay, which I think he will be, obviously. But, to me, I look at this fight, and I love fights that have just bad blood written all over it. And this is one of those fights that you just watch because you just want it to just go. Like you just want to see these two tear each other apart. And that's exactly what I believe is going to happen on Saturday at Fight Island. These two are going to get in this, and I'm telling you, neither one of them forgets. When you run your mouth to another person, they don't forget that stuff, man. UFC fighters, they're crazy. They'll use that as motivation on 6 days notice and stuff like
That's
that.
it.
They don't play. So look, all I'm saying is I know it's 6 days notice, so you don't really know what kind of fight you're going to get. But listen, I honestly believe that both of these guys are ready to go, even on 6 days notice. I think both of these guys are going to be just fine, and you're going to see an awesome fight. There's a reason this is the main event, and that's because this fight's going to be just knockdown, drag out fight, and I can't wait, man. I'm excited. It's going to be a great fight.
Who's your
Yeah,
pick?
to your point about the bad blood, this is still a little bit of lingering of the top team versus Blackzilians a little bit here. This is still a little that lingering tension between those two.
What a great point. What a great point, Sean. James, who's your pick for this one?
Oh my god.
Be bold. Be bold. Say
Put him
what
on
your
the
heart
spot,
says.
I'm picking blood. That's what I'm picking. No. Let's see. You know what? I'm gonna go Masvidal on this one. I think he's that guy that you love to hate him, and I think he's gonna pull it out. Now listen, Kamaru. I know the records are different, and Kamaru is on a different level to me, but I'll go with the upset here. I'll take the under on this one.
Nice. I love it. This one's tough. The thing I got to ask, and I want to know too, is how much training or what kind of shape is Masvidal in? He took this on 6 days notice.
He
to your
claims that
point.
he's been training, that he thought somebody was going to pull out of this fight, so he's been training for it.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
If he's in prime condition, that's going to be very interesting. I think, Sean, to your point, I kind of agree with you on that one. I think Usman's not dumb. He's a very smart fighter. He's going to come in. He's going to put the pressure on him. It's going to be up to Masvidal. It's going to be up to him to keep that range and be able to pepper him and hit him with those shots. He has sniper rifles for hands, man. He just can pick his shots. He pop, 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 pop from the outside. He can stay super long, even though he's not the bigger fighter here. He can stay long. He can stay out of range.
And he's very creative.
Very creative. And he's very smart, too. Think about his game plan, man. Think about the fact that he's gone up against Darren Till and won. He's gone up against Askren and knocked him out for the fastest UFC knockout ever because he knew that Askren was going to come out and try and wrestle hump him. And then he outboxed Nate Diaz by a mile. That wasn't even close. He just turned him into a bloody pulp for the BMF belt. Guys, I'm excited for this one for that reason because there is a little bit of bad blood behind this. To me, it's just mostly going to be about who can execute their game plan, and I think that's what's going to come down to. Can Masvidal keep this at range, or is Usman going to close the distance, press him up against the cage, and beat him how he beat Tyron Woodley?
Agreed.
So that's kind of my thoughts on this one. Any other thoughts on this one as far as like the matchup or the skill level, anything on that? Because I'm pretty sure whatever you got.
This is your classic striker versus grappler
for sure
matchup.
For sure. I still don't think Usman striking is top notch. I mean,
he's good enough to compete.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it's still on the same level as Masvidal.
And I think the only reason he got into the scrap with Colby is because that was seriously bad blood. And I think that he didn't respect his power, and he knew that he could go with him for 5 hard rounds. And he was starting, as the fight went on, he was getting the better of the shot. So I think he just kept building confidence, and that's why he decided not to wrestle.
And think about it too. Colby landed a lot of shots when he was throwing combinations. So when you throw, and Colby's not as good a boxer as Masvidal. So I think it's going to be very interesting. One, is Masvidal going to come in with the energy? Is he going to be able to come in with the pace that he can usually if he has a full training camp? And two, who is going to be able to instill their game plan in this fight?
One thing that you love about Masvidal is that when he's stepping in there, he's looking to separate you from consciousness. So that is what you're looking for.
Smash his face in.
Yeah.
For sure. Do you think he comes out fast in this fight? Because maybe he doesn't have 6 full weeks or 10 full week fight camp. I know you said
he does. I think he comes out fast. I think he tries to set the tone early. Yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah.
I think if you try to settle in, you're just gonna play right into Usman's wrestling.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you need to come out and just hit him right in the mouth right from the start. Fucking get him thinking.
Yeah. I agree. Well, guys, I'm pretty sure that's about it for us. Any closing thoughts on this one?
Nope.
All right, cool. Well,
Let the blood rain down.
let it spill. This one's gonna be fun, man. If you're paying for a pay-per-view, this is it. Watch UFC 251 on Yas Island. James,
Let's go.
thank you again for joining us. Why don't you
Absolutely.
promote your show a little bit? What time do you guys air? And talk about your show real quick before we head out.
Well, it's funny because we air in about 20 minutes.
Back to back.
No, we air on Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So we're really excited talking Bucks. Just getting ready for hopefully training camp this month, and just getting ready for that and the season that's hopefully going to happen. And things like that. So, you can catch us on FanStream. Of course, you can catch us Apple, Anchor, everywhere podcasts are. That's where we are, too. So we'd love to have you. And thanks for having me on the show, guys. I love UFC. Loved it for years, and I love being able to come on and talk about it. And I'm really looking forward to this weekend. It's going to be great.
Hey, and you were great having on. So thank you again, James from Set the Sales podcast. I know he's got to get out of here. So thanks again, James. And we'll definitely have to have you back on soon. Thanks, man.
Yes, sir.
Sean, Dan, any closing thoughts for UFC 251 before we head on
It's
out?
going to be a fun one, man.
I'm excited, honestly. I'm going to stick with it. I think Kamaru's going to let his pride get to him, and I think he's going to try and stand and bang. I don't think he's going to try and do the whole boring, take him down fight and pressure him. I think he's going to stand and bang.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Like I said, that's one of the most interesting things when you come into fights is just going to be to see what everybody's game plan is and who can instill their game plan on the other fighter.
You feel like you always have a really good idea of like what a fight's going to look like, and then most of the time it ends up looking completely different. That's why it was so great about the sport. You just don't know what the fight's going to look like until it happens.
100% sure. And especially when you got a guy with almost 50 fights under his belt in Masvidal, he's going to be a well-rounded fighter. He's going to be creative, to your point.
So the one thing, he's got a lot of losses, but you got to credit to the resurrection that he calls it, that he's really started to take his career a lot more seriously. You know, he talked about how he was always partying up late at night and missing early morning sessions and whatnot. And that's when he was kind of a 500 fighter. And now he's all in, man, and that it shows because he's just murking dudes.
Yeah, and the other thing too is he's always been game. Like you and I always loved Masvidal even before he came on this quick rise. Do you think? All right, you know what? This is actually a point I meant to say before, and I almost forgot about it. Do you think it's important for him to win this fight because he has the potential star power of a Conor McGregor as compared to Usman's he's not as exciting, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't come out with the crazy sayings, and he's.
I mean, he's
pretty
talks,
thoughtful.
But it's not riveting. It doesn't bring your eyes to the television, And
he's not no Israel.
Do you think Masvidal has that potential of
for sure? I think he's already there.
Power?
I think he's right on that brink. He's teetering the line, especially after the Nate Diaz win.
Yeah,
because he talks fantastic shit. I mean, he's as good of a shit talker as there is. I mean. Him just berating Ben Askren after he knocked him out was the most hilarious thing that I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. Saying that it's still on, man. Like if I see that dude at Whole Foods, I'm gonna slap him up.
Hey, let's just give it thanks for both of these main event fighters, just for the guys that they shut up between Covington and Askren, between the both of them.
Yeah,
I'm still a Covington fan, so. I'm not, 100% supporting your comment.
Screw Covington.
But I will say though, I mean, if you think about it, if Jorge wins this fight, just think about the super fight that will happen between him and Conor McGregor. That will just blow the roof off of any arena. Being that they've been already talking shit and want to get in the ring. So if Jorge can pull this off, Conor's definitely going to sink his teeth into that fight, and that will just be out of control. So. We'll see.
That's a great point. I didn't even think about that because this happened so fast. That could very well be the next fight for Masvidal if he wins, because it's the same thing as when GSP came out of retirement to fight Bisping. Like if you're going to take an opportunity against a 170-pound fighter, like why not be Masvidal, who's pretty small for the division comparatively speaking when you're looking at a Covington or Usman?
And it's a guy that plays to Conor's style too. I mean, I think it's a bad matchup for Conor, but it's
for sure.
Matchup than Usman, a lot better.
Yeah, for sure.
Or Covington.
Yeah, I love this, man. This is a great card. Again, Sean, you kind of came on when we started, I think, on the first main card. There's not really much on the undercard that we were talking about. As far as like UFC history there. There's a few guys that are veterans, but they don't have great UFC records. But the great thing about the UFC is when they go international, they get local guys and gals to fight on the card. So you're going to find new talent. Always a reason to watch the undercard is to see new men and women coming up. Also to kind of get your feet wet and get a feel for Fight Island and how that looks.
Oftentimes the undercards show up.
Oh, for sure, 100%, because those guys are fighting
Past
for contracts.
couple of weeks, the undercards have been outrageous.
Yeah, these are the guys making $12,000 to show up. So they're
8,000 a
hungry.
lot of times.
They were literally hungry.
8,000. Yeah, a lot of these guys get 8,000 to show up, and then 8,000 if they win. Otherwise, that's terrible. That's terrible. But either way,
Don't forget that $2,000 from Reebok.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. That's
No, you
sweet
can't forget the
Reebok
$2,000.
deal. Yeah, I think
Balling right there.
what's the highest you can get paid out from Reebok? Is it
I
like?
think it's 5.
No,
maybe
no, I think it's higher than that.
10 maybe for champions.
Did you guys? Did they ever land on who they're going to sign with next? I know we were talking about bringing back Affliction.
It sounds like Reebok's out.
Well, yeah. Actually, Dana White kind of narrowed it down in the media. He said it was either going to be Nike, Adidas, or Under Armour. I think those were because someone said, "Hey, is it going to be one of these?" I think it was 3, and I'm pretty sure it was.
I don't like
3.
Under Armour.
I haven't been a big Under Armour fan,
it's too
but
bold too much.
Yeah.
They're also going to be unloading UFC 4, the video game, while in Fight Island as well.
Oh, really? Unveiling?
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're going to be rolling it out for like PlayStation 5. And I'm not sure.
Games are so glitchy.
Yeah, I haven't played it since.
They're
2,
memes. Those games have just created awesome memes.
Yeah.
Oh, and broken arms just like flinging everywhere.
And doesn't ESPN do the fight matchups on there? Like they'll do the simulation.
Yes.
Like they do with Madden. They do that with
What
Madden
I thought was really cool is they have a part in the game where it's just kind of stand and bang, and Snoop Dogg's on it, and it is hysterical. It is absolutely hysterical.
That's wild. But, yeah, he still does that podcast with Faber, doesn't he?
No, I don't. I think they stopped that a long time ago because people were mad.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, I think a lot of people hated it.
Yeah. But back to the sponsors, yeah, I kind of hope that they go with Adidas. Adidas has stepped it up lately. So, like, since they've gone, they got some college football sponsorships with some of the bigger schools. I've really liked, with the U, all about the U, baby. But they've really done a good job as of late. Like, they used to just be solely a soccer brand, and it kind of reflected, like, that more European style. But I feel like they've...
the most uninteresting, like, apparel of
but
big change.
Yeah, and I feel like Nike's kind of turned around. They've gotten flat, and I feel like Adidas has stepped it up with the U.S. base, and they have like interesting attire.
Well, you figured Nike dominated for so long that they probably just got comfortable, and here comes Adidas with some new stuff. They're trying to get into that market.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. Well, we'll close it up. I think we're done. We're done here. Thank you guys for joining us. So we're not going to have an update show this week since obviously we're doing the UFC 251 right now. We'll go back to our update show next week, and we'll kind of use that as our recap from UFC 251 and just kind of talk through. At least by that point, too, we'll kind of have some of the follow-up storylines and stuff and see who's won and what next potential matchups we have. So thank you.
August is going to be a big month.
Yeah, absolutely. August is. We have a few big months coming up. You know what? Actually, I don't even want to just say that. The UFC has done fantastic coming back since they have come back from UFC 240. Actually, not even just the UFC, because that's giving too much credit to Dana White. The fighters have shown up since, what was it? Late April? Was that UFC 248?
I believe so.
Yeah. Since then, the fighters have shown up and have fought their asses off and have given us back-to-back great cards. Last weekend was the first break we've had in a while. So, amazing, fantastic. Guys, thanks again. Any closing comments before we head out?
Let's go. That's it.
Enjoy it, baby.
All right. Thank you, casual MMA fans, as always. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter at The Casuals MMA and on Instagram at @Casuals MMA. And you can check us out on FanStreamSports.com. You can download us or on the app or listen on the website. Thank you, everybody, and we'll catch you next time. Enjoy UFC 251.